We got a show so jam-packed with you that we have to start right now. CHGO White Sox Podcast presented by Bet365. Download their app. Use code CHGO365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. Welcome into Studio B of our CHGO offices here in the West Loop of Chicago. I'm your host, Sean Anderson. Alongside me, Joey Christopoulos.
Hello, Sean.
Hello. Today's a very big day for many different reasons. We have to get them all crammed in before we get into our guest. It is Mystery Guest Day. It was Mystery Guest Day on Tuesday, but we moved that to Thursday for the Sox Show. It's also Big Brother, Big Sister Day here at CHGO, a part of Spirit Week. As a part of ALLCITY Spirit Week, we're teaming up with Big Brothers, Big Sister of America, an incredible group creating life-changing mentorships life-changing mentorships for kids across the country. We've set a goal for 10,000 and have already surpassed that. So thank you very much to our listeners for being so with it, donating to this great event. But we'd love to smash through with that. Have already. You can continue to keep donating. You could donate using the link in the video or description. And if you want to make an even bigger impact, you could sign up to become a big by visiting bbs.org/allcity. We also want to wish you a happy Pride Night. It was supposed to be Pride Night yesterday at the rate, but it got rained out, and it's Juneteenth today, so happy Juneteenth. We're not going to be doing a typical post-game show because for Mystery Guest, I was supposed to be surprised by the guest. I'm less surprised because we've recorded these already, but it's now time to give you our first guest. We have 3 guests, and we're mainly talking about the prospects for the Chicago White Sox and the future of the organization with these 3 guests. So, Joey, who can it be now? Let's go to mystery guest number 1. Go support Sox Machine over at SoxMachine.com. James Fegan, the beat writer for Sox Machine. I am a proud supporter of SoxMachine.com. You should be as well. They do fantastic work. Here is James Fegan. What do we lead on?
Shane Smith, I believe.
Talking about Shane Smith's repertoire, because who else would I talk about that with?
Yes and no. I mean, the days off for him are kind of purely, he threw 90 innings last year. They are going to skip starts probably progressively or more going forward. They're not forecasting like a Garrett Crochet type of situation where he starts making like weird starts or just generally getting in conflict between like maybe what his representation's long-term plans are for him and what they're doing. But I think he's more subject to rookie pitcher, doesn't have a big innings base. We're going to slow play him. Similar things, if not the same scale, are going to happen to Sean Burke and Davis Martin. So I think he's a little bit on that boat. Is the changeup kind of getting out of whack at times a little bit of a symptom of that? Or just like a way to track him like wearing a little bit? Possibly, but I would say in general they're being more proactive and they're really seeing him falter. I think he was held up his velocity, even at the bad start the other night, which just definitely had the tracks greased by the defense. You saw him popping 97 in a way, like not the velo's like the end-all be-all as far as like showing fatigue, but I don't think you've seen like a start like, oh man, his stuff is really down. You have seen him kind of have games where it's like, oh, the slider's not really working, I'm going to throw curves, or the curve's not really working. And it seems like his changeup, despite how high they are on it overall, kind of is subject to that as well, but I don't see it as particularly like he's having arm problems or he can't throw his changeup sort of thing.
Right. With him being a Rule 5 pick, do you think that like bullpen's like worst case scenario, or do you think that even in September, that could be a possibility just to, again, rest the arm more?
I would think more shorter starts, if anything. I think at this point he's kind of shown he's a starter. I don't think they'd really want to detrain him in some way. The Grant Taylor thing. Grant Taylor, I think it's more, talking to Brian Bannister about it last week, it's very much just like, I think they're really concerned about holding up health-wise because of the way his delivery is. And I think you see they're prospects that they really are like almost at their innings limit for the season. They bring up and kind of work in 1 inning stints, but those are almost like side session bullpen type of mentality. I don't think they'd really want to get Shane on a reliever routine in any significant way.
Yeah, the other two that they're trying to balance right now is Teel and Quero. What have you grasped from their balancing act of their, catching and DHing balance so far as Teel has just been called up like 2 weeks ago?
I mean, it's kind of swung around in different areas. Like in talking to Spring, it seemed like you could get the idea that they're a little bit higher on Teel than Quero. Then Quero got promoted a lot sooner than Kyle Teel, despite being a year younger. They're the two youngest catchers in the majors, which I think is a wild factoid. Now that Teel's up here, he's catching, I want to say, I guess it depends on how this doubleheader goes, and he'll probably mess it up because he probably won't catch both sides of the doubleheader, and Quero caught the other night. But he had been catching 2/3 of the games, 6 out of the first 9 over the first 3 series. And Will Venable, who's not one to really criticize players very openly, said, Quero's receiving needs to get better. Teel's ahead of him right now. And you look at the numbers, and sure enough, Quero, there's some qualifiers, some guys who have, barely caught regularly, but as far as, regular catchers, was, the lowest rated framer in the sport, or in the majors. And, again, he's 22. He's the youngest catcher in the majors. Over the course of reporting this story for 5 days and having to update my stats because we didn't know that story's going to run, Quero's numbers would creep up every single day. He'd still be on the bottom, but he's getting a little better. It's okay, you literally see what they're talking about. And Teel is kind of more middle of the pack or bottom third of the league, so they're both kind of slowly growing together. But I think it's a little bit of a shading of Teel's the higher rated prospect. Teeler's especially with the way Quero's this season where it's been. He's done well, I think, for a rookie, especially a 22-year-old, but you've seen all the power go out of his game and kind of analyzing a prospect coming in. You thought, hey, he's produced homers, but exit velo-wise, frame-wise, it doesn't and swing shape, it's not really geared to be automatic 15 to 20 homers every season the way he's looked at his best prospect-wise. I wouldn't have said he's going to hit 0 through his mid-June, but that's kind of been his way, whereas Teel's a lot more in the minors, someone who's gotten to his power. So I think the ceiling for Teel is a little bit higher. I'm not of the mindset of they got to trade one. I think you've seen a lot of teams, especially playoff teams, have 2 really reliable catchers. You don't really have, the Sal Perez's anymore where it's one guy catches 140 games or just is responsible for 80 to 90% of the catching, the way the backup is kind of an afterthought or could be just a backup quality player. At the same time, it's going to be hard to get either one 500 plate appearances unless it's really strict when the other one's catching, the other one's DHing. And maybe their bats get to that spot at some point, but they're not quite there yet. But at the same time, they can be they're kind of young, they're kind of struggling. Quero gets to spend his off day working with Drew Butera, getting better at framing, and you still feel like they're kind of moving forward. But it is an interesting dance of how they're going to balance that going forward, especially if one is kind of a little bit better. Does Quero become a guy who, struggles to get to 100 games played because Teel is a stud and an all-star? It's something to watch for sure.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, just watching Quero, it does seem like he's very small, and I don't know if he projects to another secondary position at all where, Teel, you could probably talk yourself into him learning first base at some time.
Right. It's funny because, they're both the mentality you have to be a catcher where you're watching 4 different things at once every moment. Even if you're athletically good enough to play outfield, which Teel did. He was teammates with Mike Vassell in Virginia. Vassell said he was one of our best defensive outfielders as a freshman. It's a totally different mindset. Just sit out there in the outfield and not do anything. So I wonder how easily either one of them would transition. I want to say that Quero has played a game or so of first base at some point in his professional life. He has not. So, but I think Teel's probably easier fix there long term, in the sense that if Yasmani Grandal could play first base, could Edgar Quero at some point. But it's talking to Paul Janish at the beginning of spring. He said they were very reticent to really add other positions to the plate of guys who were learning how to be catcher. So I don't know if that's not something that really happens until next year. But if they become a level where hopefully, especially in an offense that's as kind of weak as this one, both this year and going forward, you'd think their bats would kind of put them in a lineup where they'd be everyday players. And so how do you really do that if you don't give them a little bit more options than just DHing to get in?
Absolutely. The other guy in the minors right now that might be facing some additional position add-ons during the offseason is Colson. First of all, I have to ask you every question that every White Sox fan asks. Why is Vinny Capra here? I think it's because Colson Montgomery is going to be here soon, no?
I think that'd be a part. I think, most direct question is like you're seeing Brooks Baldwin like slug 800 in AAA. Like, oh, he seems a little bit more qualified. In general, I think Vinny Capra, though they've been countering a bit recently in the way that Jim Margos wrote about for our site, in the way that's kind of hard to take as a fan if you're watching them struggle. It's kind of a role where you don't care if he doesn't play for a week, and you don't want to put a player who you do care if he doesn't play for a week in such a role. So that's why I think he kind of fills it. But as far as why isn't Chase Mydroff like the everyday shortstop when he's? I think if there's not Colson lingering, Chase is hit and fielded shortstop in a way that's like, oh, why don't we just give this guy shortstop for a while? But ultimately, there's a little bit of one. I think they still feel like the long-term best version of this team probably has Mydroff floating around different positions and being like a good source of bats, but not having this is our 10-year shortstop necessarily. Ultimately the best case scenario, which seems like we're very far from, we were talking in spring about Colson taking over at shortstop, is something they still want to give runway to if he has a sustained run of hitting well enough where it looks like he's major league ready. I don't think it would take him more than 3-4 weeks of bashing in AAA for them to be like, all right, it's done, bring him up. But it either has been interrupted by him getting hit by pitches and not wearing a ton of armor, or it's been interrupted by him not looking, all that great. And I think we're kind of in the aftermath of one and sliding into another right now. It's kind of I as much as grinds my gears that nobody can have 3 good games in the minors without fans being like, when does he get promoted? I think Colson's kind of on that level of, if he gets hot for 2 weeks, knowing that the design was pretty much to break him in this season, when is he promoted? But we haven't really, I don't feel like we've really reached that he's forcing the issue type of conversation.
Yeah, and I wonder if that was even ever going to be the case, because I don't even know if Quero or Mydroth or Teel necessarily forced the issue enough. It feels like they've been a little bit easy to call up guys. So if they saw enough in the swing change, maybe they do it. But let's see him get hot and get called up. His newest teammate is Noah Schultz. What's the biggest insight on him getting the call up? I know Brian Bannister replied to Shy Sox fan Mike, so I guess I should be in his replies reading Banny's words there. But what's your insight on Schultz?
It's funny, I talked to Bannister that day, and I was like, oh, yeah, good exclusive, Banny details. And I see him, he just tweeted it out. He just responds. He's on Twitter saying the same thing. To me, results-wise, especially with the control, it feels a little early. You could also look at, hey, he started 28 games in Birmingham. How should he buy a house there? What are we doing? Talking to Bannister, he felt like he had made progress on what they're doing mechanically with him. He was working on a cutter a lot of the year, and they felt like he was kind of manipulating his mechanics a little bit to execute it in a way they asked him to pretty much ditch the pitch and kind of live off of throwing 4-seamers up to right-handers to get by against them. But they felt like it got his delivery a little bit back in sync. Seems a little bit in the early stages of that still, given that his last start in AA had 5 walks. But they at least felt like mechanically that he was moving or trending in the right direction, where they felt like giving him a new test. There is an element of he will pitch with the Major League Baseball at AAA because they have that. The main reason we've been paying attention to that because we've seen very harmful effects of adjusting to that for someone like Peyton Pallett. But the hope is that someone like Noah Schultz, being a bit more sinker-oriented, that he's not really going to be harmed by the major factor, which is less fastball ride. But it's also a good, he'll be used to it, ideally, when he comes to the majors, coming pitching to Charlotte. And being a ground ball guy, hopefully he's not seeing his 300-foot fly balls go over the fence at Truist as much as others, but it remains to be seen.
final kind of segment here, questions here. With the 10th pick in 2025, like, how important is a fairly dumb question, but you look at their past top 10 picks since 2000, and it's pretty awful outside of Carlos Rodon. Like, how important is it for Chris Getz to nail this 10th pick in the upcoming draft in about a month?
Yeah, if I want to be like pedantic about it, like, well, if you nail some overslot second rounder, he becomes a star, then it doesn't really matter where it comes from, so to speak. But like, yeah,
Jack Bauer, let's go. Let's overslot him.
Right. But yeah, like if there's not one smoking gun, it's like how the last rebuild fell. It's like kind of like who shot Mr. Burns. Like everybody had a motive or like kind of hand in it, but you could just say like Nick Madrigal, Andrew Vaughn, Zach Collins if you want to throw him in there, Zach Birdie, like not getting those returns. Even Jake Berger, like I think he's become like a pretty solid return on given what you thought of him a draft night, but obviously the development process was complicated in a way where it didn't really fit into their window great either. Not getting stars out of this run where you were terrible, sort of on purpose, a huge reason why that window did not open up. Like international market's part of that. Free agent spending not really coming to fruition the way you want. Tons of reasons, but yes, it's more critical now. It was critical back then. You don't think you're going to have the spending ability even necessarily when this team gets good that you had, 5-6 years ago. So of the utmost importance, it's hard to, there's going to be a lot of reactions on draft night of, oh, they nailed this pick. Oh, they didn't do this one. That will probably be wrong. It's hard to grasp what really matters and what's really going to pay dividends on draft night to say you got to be watching this and this is going to dictate the future of the team. It's going to be something that evolves over years, but yeah, it's a massive importance, especially with where this organization's at right now, where it's really we got to develop, we got to find reclamation projects, we've got to, absolutely nail it in all of these chances we can to have cheaply acquired talent, because we've seen how this team is operating as far as spending for talent, both in the future and certainly of recent years, and certainly going forward. We can't assume Ishbia will fix it all. In terms of long-term contention future until it happens.
Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. It's a place to elevate your summer. It's a one-stop shop for all your cannabis needs. Sunnyside has an expertly curated menu with over 100 strains to choose from, plus easy online ordering and in-store pickup. And if you're overwhelmed about those hundreds of strains to choose from, ask one of their kind and lovely bud tenders to help you out. They have expert guidance and brands they know you'll love, like Good News and Mindy's. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. For existing users, use promo code CHGO50 for 50% off one Cresco Lab brand item. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day, only for 21 plus or Illinois medical card holders. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Mint Mobile. You know what doesn't belong in your summer plans this year? Your wireless bill, your expensive wireless bill holding you back while you're planning beach trips, barbecues, and 3-day weekends. Your wireless bill should be the last thing holding you back. That's why we made the switch to Mint Mobile. With Mint, you can get coverage and speed you're used to, but for way less money. And for a limited time, Mint Mobile is offering 3 months of unlimited premium wireless service for $15 a month. So while your friends are sweating over data overages and surprise charges, you'll be chilling literally and financially. And the best part too, you can bring your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all of your existing contacts. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/White Sox. That's mintmobile.com/White Sox. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited new customer offer for 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabits on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Back here on the CHGO White Sox post-game show, presented to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. Again, this is Spirit Week here at CHGO. We're celebrating that with Mystery Guest Day. Thank you to James Fegan, beat writer of Sox Machine, for joining us. Again, you could support James and making sure that he goes to all the games that he goes to by being a supporter of Sox Machine and the great work that James, Jim, and Josh all do. There's 26 letters, and they all pick the same damn initial. Let's get off to somebody who used the different initial. Geoff Pontes of Baseball America joined us, as well as our second mystery guest. We talked a ton about prospects, and the lead here was, are the White Sox in a better place than the Rockies? Please say yes, Jess. Or please say yes.
Yeah,
Jeff.
I think they are. I think a big part of that is, number one, you got a guy who I think is really smart and does a really good job in terms of pitching development, and Brian Bannister. Which is something you don't have with the Rockies. That's the number one thing I'm going to say. I covered the Rockies for my first 4 years at BA, just handed off that one. I think I'm picking up Nationals this year for the handbook. I think the way that they operate at the major league level, their sort of hesitancy to make any trades to acquire more, talent and the system is also a complete 180 from what you've seen from the White Sox. So while things have not been good in White Sox land, I do at least think you can look at this farm system and say, hey, this is a pretty good top 10 to 15. They've done a good job of getting a bunch of guys that were drafted in the Rule 5 last year. Like guys like Vassell, who's been pretty good for the team as well. And, it's not a bad young pitching staff. I think there's some positive things that you can take away from the White Sox, especially in a year-over-year perspective. But yeah, I think the Rockies are way worse off right now.
We love to hear it. As long as we're 29th, we were 30th last year, so we'll take anything up from here.
The Angels still exist, dude. The Angels still exist as well. I would not put you in the Angels or the Rockies category, even though the Angels maybe have won more games. Got a little lucky that Mike Trout decided he never wanted to leave and force his way to Philly or something. So.
Right. Well, and hey, their number one prospect, Joe Adell, has 9 homers in 18 games. He's still their number one prospect, right? What do you make of the Sox? You mentioned Brian Bannister post Rick Hahn firing. What do you make of Chris Getz and his baseball kind of obsession of hiring former players? Barfield, Bannister, Venable is the manager. He loves Grady Sizemore. How do you think that has changed their farm system? Do you think that it has improved under Getz?
Oh, it's tough to say. I certainly think the pitching development and the addition of Bannister, who was somebody who had been doing novel stuff with other teams. He was with the Red Sox and had success prior to that, and San Francisco. So I think he's kind of in the mix and was always kind of a leading voice. So I think that was a really, really good hire. Venable was a guy who had been a managerial candidate for big league clubs for seemingly a decade, like since he retired. Just kind of, he has a usual background. I think he's bilingual, if I'm not mistaken. And, I'm not shocked that he's somebody that got, a good position. I think they've traded for a lot of good players, under Getz over the last couple of years. The targeting and acquisition, I want to say, has maybe gotten a little bit better over the last year. But it's still not like they're going into the draft and coming out with one of these loaded classes like the Mariners or the Red Sox have. And that's really what's separated the Red Sox and Mariners in terms of where they rank in terms of the farm systems in baseball. A lot of what's happened with the White Sox is some homegrown guys, but a lot of it has been, trading for players. But I do want to call out Caleb Bonemer, who I think was an excellent pick last year, second rounder. And then Grant Taylor the previous year, another guy who, they got outside of the first round, had dealt with an injury going into, his final year at LSU and didn't pitch, and has huge stuff. And we'll see if there ever is an opportunity for him to eventually sort of scale out and be a starter. If not, where you got him, I think he could be a bullpen ace eventually. It's some of the best stuff in the minors. So they've gotten a little bit better with that. I guess my question is around hitting development and making these guys better, because Colson Montgomery, I think up to this point, unfortunately, has been a little bit of a black check, in terms of their hitting development, because it's the guy that was billed as one of the best hit tools in the draft early on in his professional career, was really good. And he's just not been able to get over the hump at AAA. And I guess, I'd be interested to learn, maybe behind the scenes off the record, from some of their coaches, why is that and what they think the reason is. But that's one that I do think that you can't fully go all in on the White Sox doing a good job developing on the system until some of those guys, kind of don't bottom out as badly as they did. But it hasn't been bad. I think the development on the pitching side has far exceeded what we've seen from the hitting side. And then, like, they really haven't drafted and developed like an above average regular on the position side in quite a long time. Was it Tim Anderson? Because like Andrew Vaughn certainly wasn't that. Nick Madrigal certainly hasn't been that, and I think that's, sort of what the hope is with like a Bonemer and some of these other guys.
They played Vaughn like a regular, but yeah, no, he didn't produce like one. But yeah, no, Tim Anderson, you hit the nail on the head. I want to get into Colson before we get into like maybe the travesties of top 10 picks since 2000. But do you make anything of the post swing adjustment? He was sent down to the Complex League in May. Since then, about a month of games, 247 average, 340 on base, 494 slugging. His K rate has dropped from 41.7% to 25.5%. You talk about the black mark. I mean, it was a 21 weighted runs created plus before the swing change. Now it's a 111. So it's above average. The whiff rates dropped about 13% too. I mean, it's only a month. Like, can you buy into something like that? Like, is this a savable project in Colson Montgomery? Because he was a former top 100 prospect. And, we saw the pretty much entire industry drop him from that top 100 ranking.
Yeah, I still need to see it a little bit longer, right? And I think the other really sort of tough part, when we're talking about, hitters like this and making adjustments, and the fact that, it did take place, when he's at the AAA level. Some of those numbers sometimes look a little bit gassed. So it's just barely above like 100 WRC plus over that period in time. That's good to see that it's not awful. But from a prospect like this, like you want to see like a 115 kind of minimum. You want him to at least be like 15% better than that average competition. Sure, he's still very young for AAA in comparison to the average age. It's been a welcome sign. It's just like we thought this guy was a top 30 prospect. A year ago, if I go back, I think he probably ranked maybe in the top 30 or top 25 entering 2024. And it's really just not gotten back to that point, to the point that he's fallen off of the top 100. So he's really got to perform. I don't think you can't write it off. It's a pretty bad trend. So, hopefully with the swing change stuff, it continues to work. But I got to see that hot run for 2-3 weeks where he's hitting 350 and hitting for some power and getting on base at, a 12% clip. Because this is AAA. It still favors hitters. You have that challenge system. The zones are a little bit tighter than you're seeing at other levels, might even be tighter than you're seeing at the major league level because of those challenge systems. I got to see it. I got to see the performance. So it's trending in the right direction for the first time in a while.
Are you concerned at him shortstop position-wise as well? Because it's not just, hitting as well with Colson. People do wonder with him being 6'4", if he'll even stick at shortstop. That's obviously part of the value that he had pre-2025 was that, he would be a left-handed hitting shortstop. Do you see him maybe projecting as a third base, first base, left fielder, more of a shortstop? More than a shortstop?
He's played predominantly shortstop. And the reports have always been pretty good there. Over 40 games, he's got 4 errors. Maybe not the rangiest sort of shortstop, but the actions are good. He makes the plays he's supposed to. The arm is really good. If he moves over to third base and the bat is productive and he's a 25 homer bat that hits above 250, I think that's a great outcome. Even with his pedigree, I think that's a great outcome. I also think the third base position can be a little bit underrated in terms of how demanding it is defensively. It's maybe not catcher or shortstop, but it's tough for me to argue second base over third base with some of the plays you got to make there and some of the throws you got to make there against speedy guys. So Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if he moves to third base. I think the fact that he's going to stick on the left side of the infield is what you should focus on more than anything.
And just to that point two, Sox are playing the Cardinals. Nolan Arenado manning third base. He's got 10 Gold Gloves in his career. I think it's hilarious that people even debate whether that guy should be a Hall of Famer, because it's just like, I didn't watch Brooks Robinson, but I think that's the only comparison for Arenado. Colson's new teammate is Noah Schultz. He's going to be making his AAA debut today. What do you make of the promotion for Schultz from AA to AAA, and how concerned should Sox fans be about a sub 12 whiff rate for Schultz in AA?
I think with Schultz, it's funny because I just was on a different podcast that was fantasy focused, and they were kind of asking me about Noah Schultz. And, I was not as high on Schultz coming into the year as other people. And I feel like now I'm higher than a lot of people who were higher than me a year ago. And like, this was always expected. He's 6'10", 6'11". This is an NBA center on the mound, right? We know with guys that are this big, it takes a little bit longer for the command and all that to build up. He had never pitched into the fifth inning prior to this season. I think even dating back to high school when he was at IMG, I think it was like 4 inning starts. Like, I can't find anything of record of him going into the 5th or 6th inning. He's done that in 8 out of 12 starts so far this year. So I think you have to look at that and say he's seeing the second time through the order, sometimes a third time through the order for the first time. And guys, maybe when they get a second look at that slider, are laying off it a little bit. He's got a lot of natural stuff, a lot of natural traits. It's a really interesting two-seamer. I think the cutter is better than people realize, and it's a big sweeper. I think it's just kind of honing his arsenal, kind of making sure that he's around the zone. He doesn't have to be in the zone all the time, but around the zone, and throwing those pitches to the effective, the quadrants where they're most effective, meaning commanding the ball. We talk about control and command. Control is strike throwing, but a middle fastball isn't a good location, right? It's a strike, but it's not a good location. We talk about command. It's hitting those spots within the zone and around it. So I think it's command for him. I think it's just a matter of him. He's always going to be kind of effectively wild because it's so many arms and legs and such movement and power kind of coming at you. It's refining that. I don't think this year has been a reason to panic. And I think it's one of the reasons they continue to challenge him. Despite that, doubling walk rate, because it was 6.7% last year. It's 14.4% this year. He still has a 3.34 ERA, a 3.85 FIP. It's all pretty well supported. And this is, the batting average on balls in play, 342, is really high for a guy like this. And some of it, I think, is he gets the ball on the ground, and that infield in Birmingham wasn't the most talented defensive infield. I watch a lot of the games. One of the reasons I love watching MILB TV every night is it gives me context into a lot of these numbers that sometimes, when you're scouting the stat line, it can lie a little bit. So I think the command is concerning. I think it was always going to be a bump in the road that you were going to have with a 6'10" starting pitcher. Like, this has been the case dating back to Randy Johnson when, I was 6 or 7 years old and he was making his way through the minor leagues.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just looked it up on StatHead. 10 pitchers, 6'9" or taller, have thrown 100 innings in Major League Baseball. Just 10. So he'd be the 11th if he got over 100. Final one here. Looking at some of the younger hitters, you already mentioned Bonemer. Which of these three have the best chance of being a star? Caleb Bonemer, Braden Montgomery, George Wolka.
Wow. I think Braden Montgomery is really good. He's a really talented athlete and player. Saw him on the Cape for multiple years as a two-way guy. I saw him in high school starting games, and then also saw him take a BP in a big league ballpark in Fenway. So, I've got some history with Montgomery. I think he's a really good player. Really good asset that they acquired in that Crochet trade. Man, I think Caleb Bonemer has like the Gunnar Henderson starter kit. And like, I'm not even just talking about like, hey, shortstop, blah, 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 high school guy, outside the first round. He has all that stuff, but like physically, they are very similar athletes. Their size and composition of their bodies, the type of hitters that they are, the athletic testing data that's non-public that, through some of my reporting, I am able to get some access to, or at least get some context of. very similar athletes in terms of how they tested for power and running and jumping and all those sort of things. And then you see like the first, taste of full season ball. He's been really, really good. And he hits the ball hard. All the underlying StatCast data and stuff is there. Do I think he's going to become an all-star and an MVP candidate in his second year in baseball like Gunnar Henderson did? Probably not. But I do think that this is probably the most exciting hitter that the White Sox have drafted in a decade. This is a guy I look at and say, a smart team would take that guy too. Like the Dodgers would take that guy, or the Mariners or whoever. Like that was a great pick. And he was a guy that was productive in some of the big tournaments as an amateur, in his draft summer. Those guys tend to scale. That's where the upside is. The upside, the gold is in the prep hills. That's where you should be digging for the gold. And then on the college side, expect, solid, regular positional players. And I think the upside for the college stuff really comes from the pitching side, where those guys have been through the battles and pitched in pressure environments in the SEC and the ACC, et cetera. So I'm a big after hitters from or sign guys in the international market or draft them from the prep side of things and then load up on college pitching. So I think this is a time where you kudos and tip of the cap to the White Sox for Braden Montgomery, because it's a good one.
We got to let you know about our friends over at Ray CDJR, Ray Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. This is your chance to score a great deal with Employee Pricing Plus sales event. New vehicles are now in store over at Ray CDJR. Head over to Ray CDJR on Route 12 today to choose from their huge inventory of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram vehicles, and you can lease a new 2025 Ram 1500 Bighorn for only $419 a month for 36 months, or finance 1.9% for 72 months. You can also shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000, and the best part about Ray is the Ray Price Promise. The price you see, the price you hear is the price you get with Ray. No add-ons, no hidden fees. What you see is what you get from our friends over at Ray. For more information, visit Ray CDJR today on Route 12 in Fox Lake or online at raycdjr.com. We also want to let you know about our friends over at Circa Sportsbook. If you've ever seen Circa in Las Vegas, I was lucky in my life to go there twice. It is a beautiful mecca of gambling, and you can download their sportsbook that they have at that beautiful resort and casino in Las Vegas at your fingertips. You can have the best edges and best lines at your fingertips with our friends over at Circa Sports. Whatever the sport, the app to bet is Circa Sports Illinois. They run this beautiful casino out in Vegas, and that same crew that runs the casino runs the sports book. So if you have any problems, an actual person will help you out. Circa Sports, it's sports betting the way it should be, with high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service. You can bet on the spreads, props, futures, or in-game wagering, because Circa Sports has it all. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 plus or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Continuing Spirit Week here on the CHGO White Sox postgame show, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary with our friends over at Bet365. It is a doubleheader today for the Sox and Cardinals. They lose the first half of the doubleheader 5-4. They almost had a chance, and then the bullpen happened. So typical White Sox game for you there. We're not going to be covering today's games against the Cardinals. We are going to continue with Mystery Guest Day. I want to thank James Fegan. I want to thank Geoff Pontes for joining us. Geoff is a prospect writer over at Baseball America. And finally, the third mystery guest is senior MLB writer over at The Athletic, Keith Law. I am thrilled to have Keith joining us on the show, and we start off with his book from 2017 and talking about analytics in baseball and how StatCast has kind of pushed that further in an advanced way than anything it has ever before. So here's Keith on StatCast.
It certainly changed the way that major league teams operate. They have so much more data now, even than they had 7 years ago. And what we see on the public side is not everything that's available to teams, but it does give you a sense of what sorts of things are being measured, at least in terms of player positioning, trajectories of throws and batted balls, players' running speeds, players' initial starts on defensive plays, so that we can get better assessments of players' defensive skills. And and so on. And it's also expanded far beyond the majors. Now, what we see on the public side is the MLB run StatCast systems, which are just the majors, AAA, and the Florida State League. Pretty much every minor league stadium, as far as I know, has the equipment installed to get that data, but it's proprietary to teams. Like, teams pay individually to put that stuff into their minor league affiliate stadiums. So, what I find, it's a mixed bag, because it's great to have more information, but I also, you need some experience, I think, and some context to understand that information. People love to send me screenshots of part of a player's baseball savant page as if that is an argument in and of itself. And to me, that's data. Data is not an argument, right? You want to see more about, you want to see what a player's production is, but you also want to see how he is getting to that production, whether he is a hitter or a pitcher. And the StatCast data, whether you're doing it from Savant or doing it on your own, can help us better understand how the player is getting to that production, whether it's likely to continue going forward. I also feel like without the context of understanding what some of this data is actually measuring, and, in my opinion at least, having an understanding of scouting and what professional evaluators say about these players, it is hard to get a complete picture, no matter how granular that data might be.
Absolutely. And there is so much data out there. Do you think that's part of the difficulty why Major League Baseball has maybe been slow to reach full saturation of analytics? Because I think NBA fans are a little sick of the fact that analytics have ruined their game. Do you think Major League Baseball is even approaching like full saturation of analytics? Because you could still reach out to the Rockies owner via email and get a response.
Mm-hmm. You have to have a large, functioning, integrated R&D department to be a competitive Major League Baseball team right now. The worst teams have been among the last to adopt this. We're going to talk about one of them today. You mentioned the Rockies too. They also have been fairly late on the analytics bandwagon. You just can't operate in an environment against competitors who are working with more information. Not just more complete information, but more of the analysis that comes out of it. You can hand everyone the data, but it's also, again, matter of what you do with it, how you're working with it, what context you can bring to it from other disciplines to try to make better decisions. Otherwise, you are competing against them in the market for players, and you've basically got one hand tied behind your back. So I think we will see some teams continue to adopt more analytical approaches. But we've also seen some teams, I think, go too far in that they've decided that they don't need the information from the human side of it, from scouts, even to some extent from coaches. We're seeing that play out right now with the Red Sox, where they're getting savaged for a lot of their corporate culture issues, some of which do seem to be tied to the fact that they've decided to essentially outsource a lot of scouting, particularly professional scouting, to the R&D department. And it's showing up in some worse transactions like the Devers trade and some other moves they've made where I think they did not properly evaluate some of the players involved in the deals.
What do you make of the Red Sox? Which is why we're talking about it. There was obviously the trade in December, Crochet for Teel, et cetera. What did you make of that trade at the moment? And do you feel any differently now that the extension for Crochet has been signed?
The extension wasn't part of the trade, right? The Red Sox only acquired from him the service time that was remaining till he got to free agency, which wasn't very much. So I thought the White Sox did really well. I remember there was a fair amount of criticism of them at the time for that trade. People felt like they didn't get enough. And my thought was they got two recent first rounders. Teel had played very well up until the point of the trade. Montgomery hadn't played, obviously, because of the injury, but I was very high on him coming out of college, at least. And thought Madroth and Wilkeman were nice throw-ins. The one thing that's changed, well, Montgomery came back healthy, right? So the uncertainty around him is no longer there. Madroth has just turned out to be a better player than I think anybody expected. And I don't know what the White Sox thought of him really at the time of the trade. You could argue the Red Sox underevaluated him, but so did I. So I'm not inclined to be all that critical. I still don't love his swing. Still find it hard to believe he's playing a capable shortstop because he didn't when I saw him a few weeks before the trade, actually. But the reality is he's doing it, and the approach is absolutely elite. That's going to keep him in the major leagues for a long time. So that's the one thing that's different is the guy who I thought was the third best player in the trade is a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, and do you still think he's the third best player in the trade? Like, I mean, because I don't think your evaluation of Teel or Montgomery's changed too drastically.
No, not at all. I mean, like I said, Montgomery came back healthy. He is exactly the guy. I had him ranked 4th in the draft class last year. Then he wrecked his ankle, and I think that's the main reason he slipped to the 13th pick, because teams were just uncertain. Is he going to suffer any lasting effects? Will he still be good in right field? And obviously, we've seen him this year. He's more than fine. So they might have 2 stars out of that deal. And then a solid regular in Midroth, kind of doesn't matter if Wickleman even does anything at that point. That's just house money.
Right, and his approach at the top of the lineup's been welcome. So, if he's our 7th or 8th or 9th hitter once this team's fully formed, it's all welcome for Chase. Let's give you some flowers here. You were the first person to demote Colson Montgomery from the top 100, and it seems like the industry completely followed suit. Now that he has gone down to the complex league, readjusted his swing with Ryan Fuller, have you changed your thought or stance on Colson Montgomery, or is it the fact that the defensive, the fact that he's not going to be a shortstop likely in his major league career is the main reason he's not a top 50 prospect anymore?
He's also not hitting. He had a couple of good games right after he came back, and then he just reverted to form all over again. He's not hitting. I just pulled up last couple of weeks. He missed a little time here and there, got hit by a pitch at one point. And I mean, this is an arbitrary sample here, but it happened to be his last 12 games. He's 6 for 40 with 14 strikeouts. It's kind of who he is. I don't think he's nothing. I don't think he's a non-prospect. He is not a shortstop, and he may not hit. So I'm not sure what you have left at that point. A utility infielder, maybe somebody you're waiting a couple of years to see if there's enough power there where that can maybe carry a low batting average, low on base percentage, and he's a second division regular at 2nd or 3rd. It's not the player I think most folks thought he was going to be after that one big breakout year before the injury. And I will forever wonder if he doesn't work out. It all started with the year he had the back injury. He's just never been the same player since then. I don't know that that's the cause. I just think the timing seems like it's probably not coincidental.
Well, right. And I mean, he had the chance to win the opening day starting shortstop gig out of spring training, played 3 games, and then the back crept back up and halted his play. And thankfully it hasn't halted his play in the minor league so far. But again, right. The play hasn't even been that good to see so far. His new teammate is Noah Schultz. Schultz will be making his AAA debut tonight. Are you surprised by Schultz's promotion from AA to AAA? Do you think it was early at all, or do you think he's about ready?
I don't love the idea of taking a guy who's had issues with walks and more generally with just locating in the strike zone and moving him up to AAA where they use the ABS system in some situations, because walk rates are just generally higher in AAA and strikeout rates are a little bit lower. And particularly it's called strikes. There's a lower percentage of called strikes, more percentage of called balls in AAA than there are in any of the other levels. And so are you setting Schultz up for success by moving him up when he hasn't really righted that ship? I think his last outing in AA, he walked 5 in 5 innings. Moving him up to a situation where throwing strikes is just going to be a little bit harder. What is accomplished by doing that? He has other things he needs to work on. But ultimately, if he's going to be an above average major league starter, and he could be, he's going to have to throw strikes. And we're just not seeing that. And so I don't know. I know there was some explanation of we were trying to get him to execute certain pitches at the lower level. I saw Bannister's comments. That seems like a post hoc explanation. Why'd you do this? Well, here's a reason. But it doesn't really bear out if you go in and look at the pitch data or even watch some of his outings in AA. I don't think he's ready. Like if you wanted to say, well, we want him to make his debut this year and work in relief. Sure. That's fine. Guys break in doing that. That's the old Earl Weaver thing. But to have him go up to AAA and start, I'm worried the walk rate is going to go up even further because of the structural issues at that level.
Right. And I mean, the one thing that sticks out to me is a sub 12 whiff rate. Like he's not even getting like on the pitches that he does throw, the swing and misses aren't even there. Like there's a decent high BABIP just because there's so many balls in play that are able to make weak contact, but they, slip through the infield or what have it. Speaking about the reliever track here, we're kind of seeing that with Grant Taylor. Do you think that Schultz should make his major league debut this year? Should it be saved for 2026 as a full starter role? Or now that they've kind of entertained this with Grant Taylor already, do you think that this is something that they just might explore with Schultz as well?
Well, doing it with Taylor made a ton of sense because he just can't stay healthy. And I mean, the stuff. So I should go back a little bit. The stuff last year, he made 4 or 5 starts coming back from Tommy John, then got hurt again, missed the rest of the year. And those 4 or 5 starts, I only had video on those, but it was incredible. I thought this guy's going to be, he one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, it looked like. Then he comes back in fall league and he's terrible. And he came back this year, very limited workload. They're doing the right thing, and the stuff is electric again. And so I'm pretty sure they're thinking, I've seen some comments, they were sort of saying, if you read between the lines a little bit, right, we just got to get what we can while this guy's healthy. We don't know if it's going to last. We don't know if he can hold up as a starter. So might as well just bring him to the big leagues. What are we waiting for? Totally agree on that. Schultz, to me, different story. Higher upside, younger. He's at least 2 years younger than Taylor is. You are really hoping for a top-end starter there. He might be more of a ground ball guy, and that would work, but you really have to cut the walks. For that formula, successful ground ball starters tend to have really good control. To your question, do I call Schultz up? I don't think they need to, and I'm pretty sure he has one more year before he has to go on the roster. Could be wrong on that. But the issue is, what do you think is the right thing for his development? If they're thinking this guy's going to be on our major league staff next year, fine. That's a good argument to say we want to call him up in September and give him some long relief work. There will be blowouts in either direction. That's a perfect time to say, go in and get 6 to 9 outs. Maybe you're spacing him out, but just to kind of get his feet wet, get him facing some major league hitters. The coaches, get to know the coaches, get to know the catchers. They all start working together. There are a lot of benefits to doing that. I don't know that that's going to be the case because of the issue I talked about before. He's got to throw more strikes. He's got to show you something different. And it doesn't have to be right away. He's got 2.5 months, right? He's got to show an adjustment in his time at AAA, that he is throwing more strikes, that he might be ready for that challenge, not just to come up in September, but to make the major league roster next spring.
Absolutely. And the final question here, we talked about him a little bit already. Braden Montgomery, come 2026, will he be the number one prospect for the Chicago White Sox when you make your list?
Yeah, that's probably true, right? I think that makes sense, especially because they're going to lose a couple of guys to graduation anyway. Teel, I think, is very unlikely to be on the list at that point. As long as Montgomery just kind of keeps doing what he's doing, he's cooled off a little bit at high A. I'm fine with them leaving him there a little bit longer. I do want to see him finish at Double A because, and I know he missed time last year. He's not in this exactly the same category as his draft mates. Many of the guys from that draft class are already in the majors. But I think he needs to finish at Double A this year to sort of cap off the season, see him against a better caliber of competition. He's not destroying high A, but the underlying stuff is good, right? He's getting on base at a reasonable clip. He is not striking out excessively. He's shown some power. He's playing good defense. Great. Maybe they wait for him to get a little hot streak before they call him up. I know some teams like to do that. I would like to see him at least, let's say, by the All-Star break, from there to the end of the year, spend that time in Double A. And even if he does struggle, fine. That is an adjustment. Then he has the offseason to work on stuff. He goes back there to start next season. And then the goal is maybe set him up for a debut next September.
Right. Do you feel like Braden has any Do you feel like he has any tool that stands out above the rest, or is it the well-roundedness of his game that makes him such an intriguing prospect?
I mean, he's got a great arm, but that's kind of the least important thing for a position player. He was up to 95 off the mound when he used to be a two-way player, mostly at Stanford. Did very little of that at Texas A&M, but he hits the ball really hard. You want to call that power? To me, it's not exactly the same thing. I know a lot of people on the analytics side essentially equate exit velocity with power. I don't think that's quite that simple. He does hit it really hard. And in his case, it does translate into power. And I think it's going to keep translating into power. I could see him as he grows a little bit and as he gets more comfortable and improves his swing decisions a little bit more, you're going to see more power. Like, he should be a 25 homer a year guy, maybe a little more, because obviously the White Sox home field's always been a little homer friendly anyway. But I do think he is, that's going to be the thing that stands out. He's a well-rounded player. He does a lot of things really well, but ultimately it's the power that's going to make him a star.
A deep thank you to James Fegan, Geoff Pontes, and Keith Law, who just joined us there, for joining us on Mystery Day, a part of Spirit Week here at CHGO. We've been donating money, or at least raising money to donate to Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. We have gotten past our $10,000 goal as a all-city company, but we aren't against going up and beyond that number. So if you want to donate, there is a link in the description to donate to our efforts for Big Brother Big Sister of America. I think you can also go to bbbsa.org/AllCity to sign up to become a Big Today. Thank you to everyone for hanging out with us. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. And we'll be back on Sunday to recap the White Sox series with not the Diamondbacks.
Me?
Oh, I thought, it'd be nice to bail them out. But let's wait. Because I should know these things and I didn't. It's the team.
Diamondbacks?
Right. No, Diamondbacks are on Monday. It's my job to know.
You'll be back on Sunday either way.
We'll be back on Sunday recapping the series against the Blue Jays. Didn't I say the Blue Jays?
Oh, yeah, we're going to Canada. Let's go.
We're going to Canada.
Great.
Oh, Canada. It's time to end the show. Goodbye. I'm Sean Anderson. Thank you to Joey Christopoulos for all of his great, great hard work getting all of those guests together for today's show. Thank you to James, Geoff, Keith, and Joey for their work today. We will talk to you on Sunday. Goodbye.
We all silly like the mayor.